Hi, I'm Lauren O'Reilly. I'm a qualified pharmacist and your host of the Wellness Script podcast, your source of truth for all things health and wellness. Today's guest is Ciara McNulty, a registered dietitian who cuts through the noise with practical, evidence-based advice when it comes to nutrition, diet, and all things looking after your health and wellness through what we eat. Here is my conversation with Ciara. Enjoy.
Ciara, it's January. We're hearing a lot about detox, reset, all of the things that put us under pressure at this time of year. What's something that you would like people to maybe not focus on or move away from that we're typically hearing a lot about this time of year?
I'd love for people to enter the new year and think about January as a time to focus less on restriction and instead put their energy into looking at abundance in their life and particularly in their nutrition. Most of us default by thinking about what we can cut out, but there's so much that we can gain from adding in nutritious foods, liquids, solids, whatever it is into our diet that will influence our health and help us feel better. So that's a great place to start.
Yeah, like it's well-meaning when we think, we want to cut out nasty foods or maybe alcohol for some people it might be, but it's very hard to go from one, I suppose, way of life, especially around Christmas when everything's actually ramped up way more, to then go to, okay, I'm not eating any sugar, I'm not even drinking any alcohol. So everything in moderation, I suppose. And you're saying adding things in. So would that be things like protein, keep us fuller for longer so we're not reaching for sugar or more impulse kind of foods? Or
Yeah, definitely. I think focusing on your protein intake is always going to be helpful.
Yeah.
But also, I love thinking about how many plants that we have in our diet. I know gut health is a huge topic, and one of the biggest recommendations that experts have on gut health is having 30 different plants in your diet every week. Sounds kind of overwhelming potentially, but when you break it down, it's really not that much if you think about diversifying the foods that you eat. So when it comes to abundance, we can also think about variety. So why not make sure that your diet is really colorful and that you're trying new things and new fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, all of that type of thing. And protein, as you mentioned. And also another really great one is not cutting out carbs, but instead making sure that you're having whole grains and high fiber types of carbs, because they also help reduce spikes in your blood sugar, keep you focused, keep you reduce the risk of having irritability and big energy peaks and troughs. So it helps keep you stable, just like protein does. And those are great things to focus on.
Yes. And I suppose January is also a time when we're focusing on our goals as well, like our, whether it's work or, in our life, our relationships. And I think that's a key thing as well, that we're not having spikes and troughs and, affecting our mood by having something that's going to give us energy quickly, but then by lunchtime we're kind of feeling really deflated or energetically kind of starved. So in terms of practically applying that, is meal prep a big thing that you think works for you? Everyone's busy with work and making decisions around lunch. Is that something that you kind of focus on with clients? Or
Yeah, I think meal prepping or even meal planning can be really helpful, and using that to focus on how to keep your energy levels stable and your concentration stable throughout the day. Meal prepping can be useful, but I know even myself when I'm busy or most of the time, I really find it hard to meal prep. Some people are great at it, but I think it's not the only answer. I think once you're aware of how to shop smartly in restaurants, in supermarkets, on the go, knowing how to plan the food and the type of food that you're going to eat throughout the day is really beneficial, because it can take the pressure off you when you don't have the capacity to meal prep, because you can just hop over to the local supermarket and grab the right ingredients that you can eat immediately.
Yes. And with supermarkets, I have always, my mom has always said that that's kind of the most important way to set yourself up, I think, for a healthy week. She always say, well, if it's not in the house, you can't eat it, So yeah. So I think in terms of that being a way to set yourself up for success. But at the same time, there is a lot of noise online about supermarkets and like reanalyzing ingredients and things like that. So I suppose, where would you stand in terms of like doing your weekly shop? Is it that you come up with all your meals and then just buy according to that? Or how do we kind of be smarter when it's like there's so much like this is 3 for 2 or this is 32% off or this is a new product? It's just really confusing.
Planning is always the key to everything. And I think that you could even sit in the parking lot of the supermarket and plan and regulate. So it doesn't have to take up that much time or happen that much further in advance. Some people may even benefit from doing online shopping because then you're actually taking yourself out of the environment and you're less likely maybe to fall for bundles of things that you don't necessarily need or fall for a lot of the marketing that we don't even realize is in place but is really influential. I learned this from Kel Galvin?
Yes.
She taught me so much about shopping smart.
Yeah.
And it's things that I've passed on to a lot of my clients and friends. And it's something that she really brought to my attention is like, there's a lot of marketing at play in supermarkets, which is fine, but you can't beat yourself up if you're falling victim to them because they're really smart. But anyway, back to the question. Online shopping or planning, literally sitting in the car before you get into the shop is super helpful. And it doesn't take up that much time if you're just giving yourself a few minutes before. And it also helps reduce the cost of shopping and reducing food waste as well, which is so important for all of us because the more food we throw away, the more money we're throwing away. And it's just unnecessary waste as well. Planning is key. And then I also want to touch on what you mentioned about there being so much online about nitpicking ingredients and foods that we're buying and how overwhelming that can feel for people. It's not something that I would ever encourage people to focus their energy on. There's a lot of additives, preservatives that play really crucial roles in food, and they're not necessarily things that are dangerous for the most part. If they were dangerous, they wouldn't be in our foods. For the general population at a realistic level, it's not something that we need to nitpick about. It's obviously great to choose healthier options, but I would really just focus on whole foods where you can, but also convenience is so important for so many people and so many families too. So don't let that overwhelm make your shopping more expensive or more stressful.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think it's very stressful to kind of have to analyze every single thing that you're putting in your basket that you normally thought was a pretty healthy food or whatever, and then have to think about things like, preservatives that actually preserve your food, for example. Sometimes they are necessary. Obviously, we try and follow a whole food diet wherever possible, but sometimes it is like people have families to feed and budgets to be considered of as well. So yeah, I think opening it up to just like doing your best, and we kind of do know what is gonna be healthy for us, and just kind of intuitively.
Yeah, I think there's some things on a food label that are worth being able to identify, like high contents of added sugars. We probably don't need those things, so that's fine to remove those options from your basket. And high levels of saturated fat, you can always read that on the back of the package. We don't want to be overloading our bodies with saturated fat. It can increase your cholesterol. And then also high levels of salt. We also know that we probably don't need that much salt, and it can increase your risk of developing high blood pressure. So high sugar, high salt, high fat foods, by all means, feel like you can take those out, and it shouldn't be too stressful. They're quite easy to identify in packages. Anything apart from that, I would be wary, of stressing over.
Yeah, and those that you highlighted, most of those are kind of on the front. The green and the red and the orange, saturates sugar. That's something I always would have paid attention to. That's really helpful as a guide. Yeah, having to kind of overlay.
Well, yeah, it's really handy and it's visual and it's a quick, easy thing. I suppose most treats or confectionery desserts type foods are likely going to fall into some of those categories. So I'm not saying to totally cut those out either. But for things like packaged soups or sauces, sometimes those unnecessarily do have added sugars and salts. So your everyday foods that are part of your regular meals, I would probably look at it in those, but don't feel like there's no treats allowed either. Always coming back to that balance as much as you can.
Yes, 100%.
There's no shortage of supplements out there, but knowing what's right for you is often the hardest part. That's one of the reasons I trust Sona Vitamins, who are the sponsor of today's episode. They're Ireland's oldest and largest producer of nutritional supplements with over 41 years of experience, and their philosophy has always been that good nutrition should be backed by science, manufactured to the highest standards, and delivered with genuine care for people and for the environment. But what truly sets them apart, especially from my pharmacist point of view, is that Sona still believes in real customer support. So if you're ever unsure which product is right for you or your family, or you have any question that you want answered, you can actually call or email and speak to a real human at the end of the phone, someone knowledgeable and who will guide you rather than being left to figure it out alone. They will endeavour to find an answer for you. You'll find the full Sona range in local pharmacies and select health stores nationwide or online at sona.ie. Now, let's get back to the episode.
I think it's just about as you said, not being overwhelmed. I think the online shopping piece is a huge thing. And I love that you mentioned the budget as well. It's obviously something that people, that we're all thinking about this time of year. And because you can come out of the supermarket and have bought loads of things and spent loads of money, but not even have a meal to put together. You're like, I have this and I have this, but I don't have a dinner, or I don't have a lunch or whatever. I know. So
I think especially for people that maybe are shopping for one or two people.
yes.
And if you get caught up in bundles and you end up buying more than you can consume in the week as well, that's a really common place where you end up, getting rid of food or not having the food that you actually need. And a lot of us are shopping for ourselves or just for one or two people. So online shopping maybe for those groups of people can be really helpful. It helps you just pick up what you need and leave what you don't.
Exactly. And I think this time of year as well, we also hear a lot about detoxing. What does that word mean to you? Does it mean anything? Is it can we detox?
Oh yeah, it's a huge word that comes up every January.
Yes.
I don't get excited by that word. It doesn't mean much to me, but I know that a lot of people are curious about it and kind of make decisions based around what they hear about it. Detoxing is quite, I would say, not impossible, but our bodies are very strongly regulated by themselves. We have our intestinal system, we have our kidneys, we have our liver, we have our lungs. Technically, all of those parts of our body are detoxing us from toxins that are created or ingested. And they do a really good job. They keep everyone alive. And, consuming green juices, teas, supplements, probably clinically is not doing much. It might work as a placebo effect, maybe if you feel like you're doing something good for your body. But it's also important to note that ingredients in a lot of those teas or supplements may not be regulated. And a lot of supplements, you probably know this as a pharmacist, can damage your liver. Especially if it's taken to high qualities or over a long period of time. We just don't know a lot about herbs or particular supplements because it's not a regulated industry. So if we're thinking about those products, I would probably completely steer away from. And we can focus on foods that help our circulation, our liver, our blood sugar regulation. And those are going to just naturally help your body feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. It drives me much tea, detox teas. I've seen laxative herb in there that are people probably think that it's going to, I suppose you'll get this side effect where it's basically your bowels are clearing out, but that's not there's no need for you to speed the transit of foods and through the gut. It doesn't benefit you. You probably just be hungry. So
I think that's what part of a lot of those, isn't it? It's just laxative based teas, and mentally that might help people feel lighter, they're cleaner.
yeah.
But it's only going to last as long as you take them, and at a deeper level, I can't imagine it's doing anything more helpful than that.
Yeah. And if, I don't know, if somebody is maybe checking the scales or something, it's more than likely water weight that they're seeing gone. And the chances are that once they go back onto their regular diet, it's going to be back to their usual weight. So yeah. And another thing that comes up, I suppose, is the detox teas and the juices, but also fasting. I suppose, can it ever be helpful for somebody to fast? Like, you wouldn't catch me doing it. I just wouldn't be a nice person. But is it ever helpful, or intermittent fasting maybe is more?
Yeah, I definitely think it works for, a lot of people. The first thing that's important for any diet or, behavior that you're going to make, it's if it feels like something you want to do and you are doing this on your own accord, so that's something that just seems interesting to you that you'd like to try. Yeah, that will first of all set you up for success. If someone's telling you to do something and you don't really want to do it, it's never going to work for you. I would say a lot of people find it helpful if they have a big appetite, or if they feel like they find it really hard to regulate their appetite or their eating patterns. Like maybe for someone that's more of a grazer throughout the day, or likes to mindlessly snack throughout the day, or just finds it hard to kind of notice their eating behaviors before they happen. Intermittent fasting can be helpful to just narrow the eating window. And if weight loss is a goal, or just if feeling better and like more regular in terms of energy levels or bowel movements, if those are all goals for someone, then if they're someone that follows those patterns, fasting probably will help them. And maybe that's for a short period of time, or maybe that just becomes more of their natural. But I think for people that think intermittent fasting is their way of losing weight, and that's like the best way to do it or the only way to do it, that's not true. Okay, it will help you potentially cut out a meal and cut out calories, and that will help you lose weight if that's a goal for you. Sure. But you could cut out calories in so many ways, or you could increase your energy expenditure through exercise in so many ways that will help you lose weight. So it's just one tool in a toolbox.
So if you're someone who is, for me, for example, I'm a better person when I've had breakfast. I'm nice. Like I love breakfast, but for other people, they couldn't care less if they had breakfast. And it is an easy way to stay. The discipline of it is a great way to stay on track with their goals, and feel about it. Then great. But as you said, tailor it to how you operate. And just to kind of clarify, I suppose intermittent fasting is just delaying or condensing the eating window and delaying the time, I suppose, to which you start your first meal of the day, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it can really, there's so many ways that people do it. There's like different time frames that people use, or different times of the day. Like some people might start eating at lunchtime, whereas maybe other people will eat in the morning and stop eating, early or before bed, depending on what their schedule looks like. Some people like to fast for 12 hours. Some people like to fast for 16 hours. There's no one size fits all when it comes down to it as well. But it's also really important that you're not over restricting or over restricting your timing, because we all get hangry and we all need food as well. So yes, there's always a fine line.
I think so. And I think it's very particular to your stage of life and your age and things like that. Like for, women or young girls who are maybe in school or just starting college and have, menstrual cycles to think about, I think it's important not to restrict too much, to tailor it to the time of month that you're in, and not to, I suppose, just restrict, as you said, just focus on abundance and what you can add in.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that shouldn't consider intermittent fasting at all, especially pregnant women or anyone that has an history of an eating disorder or disordered eating. There's a lot of reasons to not do it, especially in the younger teenagers. They have higher nutrition requirements, and usually we don't want them to reduce their energy requirements, and for so many different reasons. But yeah, as I said, it's just one tool in the toolbox, and everyone is so different and on different journeys. Yeah. And weight loss comes up a lot, but there's a huge part of our population that shouldn't even be considering weight loss at all. Yeah. And it's important to know where you stand with your health and your body, and what priorities you should have in this time in your life. And weight loss is not the only thing that we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on abundance and having a really nutrient-full diet. Most of us would benefit so much more from focusing on that.
Yeah, and feeling fueled. And thankfully there is a huge exercise movement, which is wonderful, but then making sure that you're actually fueled, that you're not showing up to your Hyrox class or your HIIT class in your gym or whatever hungry.
Yes, that is such a good point. Most of us don't think about pre-exercise nutrition for fuel. And that's not even just the morning out, because, if you get up and go to the gym at 6 a.m, obviously it's trickier to find time to fuel, but that can start from the day before, like getting in a good dinner before you go to bed and you wake up and go to the gym. And the food that we eat is significantly linked to your performance, whether that's in a competition, in an event, or just in a training session. Being well fueled will help you push that little bit harder, get those extra gains, improve your fitness because you're able to do the work. If you're underfueled, it's much harder to put in a good session and to reap the benefits. And most people also don't understand that when you're exercising, you're putting your body under a lot of stress and you're breaking down muscle, which is supposed to happen. But having the fuel and the nutrients to rebuild the muscle is where you benefit from exercise.
Right.
It's not the like stress in itself in the moment. It's the rebuilding of the muscle afterwards, which is completely reliant on your nutrients.
You're probably going to be a more stressed individual, I would imagine, if you're putting yourself through a lot of hunger and a lot of training. Like I always think about things from an evolutionary perspective. It's almost like you're hunting for food and then you do the training, but then you didn't get any food. Like it's almost like you ran out to go hunt a bear, but you never got anything, and then you're going back home, you're still hungry. Like surely the body is in a state of fight or flight kind of.
Totally. Yeah, I was going to bring up fight or flight. And if you think about that over like a chronic period of time, which doesn't even have to be that long, it can have significant like impacts on people's body. There's something called low energy availability, which can happen over like the course of weeks or months of just putting yourself in a high state stress. And I know so many women, myself included, having been through this before. It's like you go through a period of being, doing all this high intensity exercise, changing your nutrition needs, not listening to your body. And it ends up in losing your menstrual cycles and having a huge knock-on effect on your health, just your day-to-day hormone health and body health. And when women lose their menstrual cycles, they have low energy, low estrogen, which has a huge impact on your heart health, your bone health, your cognition. Like these aren't just, simple things that you can brush off. Like it does actually impact your health and how you feel on a daily basis. And if you don't catch it, in time, it can be really hard to recover from something like that. And you need to fuel yourself.
Yeah. So if there is a woman or a younger girl listening who maybe has lost their menstrual cycle, like what kind of advice would you have for them? Should they see a dietitian or go to their GP or,
Yeah, there's so many reasons why people have like delayed cycles, longer cycles, or completely just don't have periods for a long amount of time. I think the rule of thumb is if you haven't had a period in 3 months, it's really important to see your GP. There's many things that can be going on. But I think if it resonates with you, if you're someone that does, high intensity exercise regularly, if you're someone is on any sort of restrictive diet, maybe that's a vegan diet, intermittent fasting, or just like calorie counting. And if you've had any changes in your body composition or weight, those can all be kind of red flags that you may be in this category of low energy availability. So it has to be diagnosed as well with a doctor, just in order to look at anything that can be going on or any underlying conditions that can also affect your menstrual cycle. So first things first. But I suppose if you are diagnosed with that, and if high stress and dietary changes are causing the loss of period, it would be so helpful to talk to a dietitian, and so that you can have a plan to get back on track and know how much and what types of food you need to meet your needs and to help.
Yeah, like that makes so much sense. And because I suppose the body is so jaded and so responsive to what's going on in the environment, isn't it? Like, and I heard somebody say about it recently, like that, if you think about it, the menstrual cycle is potentially preparing the woman's body for a pregnancy. And like, if it feels like there isn't enough energy available to maintain like my own health, then I definitely can't like grow a human, and have pregnancy because I just don't have enough energy. Clearly there must be some food restriction or not. There's no food available, so we can't, exactly. I always kind of think, it is this indicator that we're, if we're healthy, if we have our healthy regular menstrual cycle, because the body's like, okay, we're good. Like, if a baby came along, we'd be able to
Yeah, it was about yeah. And some people call it like the sixth vital sign. It's like it is a clear indicator that things are functioning as they should. And it's a really good point. Like it kind of makes it really easy to understand. If you don't have enough energy, how are you going to sustain another life? So the easiest thing that your body can do is actually shunt energy away from the reproductive system, kind of shut that down for a little bit temporarily, make sure that there's no pregnancy that needs that or requires that energy, and then it has that extra energy to go to other places like your muscles, your brain, your heart that's like crying out for more. So it's a really interesting instinct that our bodies just have naturally, and it's so important. But that's why it's so important as well to listen to it. But a lot of people are on hormonal contraception or, any sort of hormonal therapies that do, create a, like an artificial cycle or an artificial bleed. So it can be hard for people to pick up on those changes too, if you're taking anything. So women do have a bit of intuition. I think it's always important to kind of follow that if you have any concerns or if you feel like something's changed.
And Ciara, you do a lot of work with, corporate and like people who are probably in really busy, stressful positions and fueling for, even we talked about for fueling for exercise, but also fueling for like brain health and mental energy. So for both, men and women like that, what do you kind of see coming up for people in that space?
I think there's a few things that influence our mental performance and cognition, and everyone is different, but most people don't understand the role that carbohydrates play in our brain capacity. So the brain is I think it's our only organ that only is fueled by carbohydrates or glucose. Like our muscles and everything else can use energy from other sources if needs be, but carbohydrate is the most available and efficient source of energy. And when we think about eating enough carbohydrates, most people assume that they have to be quite physically active to deserve to eat carbohydrates.
I love that you use that word deserve. Does feel like that sometimes, that you have to deserve.
Yeah. I think a nice way to describe it is our brain needs 8 slices of bread a day in terms of carbohydrates to function, especially if you're in a high demanding job. Or any job, we all need to be able to use our brain. So that's a big one. And in terms of educating people on how important it is to eat regular amounts of good carbohydrates, so whole grains, high fiber carbohydrates that are not giving us the blood sugar fluctuations as much as our added sugars. So choosing the right carbohydrate and eating it regularly. And then the other thing is looking at our brain health now, but also into the future. So how can we support this longevity in terms of how our brain is functioning for the rest of our careers? And healthy fats or omega-3s are something that is super important for our brain health, our cognition, and our concentration. So that would be oily fish like salmon, mackerel, herring, trout, or if you don't eat oily fish, considering an omega-3 supplement. And it would be eating oily fish once or twice a week regularly. And a lot of people don't. I think as time goes by, less people are eating fish, especially in Ireland too. So having a fish or algae-based supplements will be helpful.
Okay, so you saying algae, would that be in reference to somebody who is vegan from the vegan diet?
Yes, correct, exactly. Okay. Because flaxseed is another option, but it's not as beneficial in terms of actually converting omega-3s in the body. So if I didn't want to choose a fish option, I would choose an algae option for omega-3s.
Okay, so we talked about corporate and like people travel a lot for work, maybe weekly, monthly, or just for fun. So that's something I'm always conscious of when I'm traveling. Like, how can we kind of stay on track when our environment is changing?
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like more and more these days people are traveling for work, for fun, or they're like going to live somewhere else for a month and, out of your normal routine. Yeah. And I think the simplest thing I would recommend people doing to start with one change would be to visualize a plate. And this is how you can always check off if your meal is going to be nicely balanced. And that's really the most important thing. So you have your plate and you divide it into equal thirds. 1/3 should be a mixture of vegetables, or it can be one vegetable, doesn't matter, but a vegetable that you like and something that's going to be, a 1/3 of that meal. The other third should be a lean protein, so something like chicken or fish or a lean cut of red meat. And then your other third should be a whole grain carbohydrate. So that could be like whole grain bread, porridge oats in the morning, boiled or baked potatoes, keeping the skin on for extra fiber, or rice. So loads of options there. But once you check off those 3 components, you're doing so much better than most people. And you're going to be setting yourself up for a brilliant meal. And if you can do that as regularly as possible when you're away, you're doing great. A really easy hack that I would always do if I'm in a restaurant is make sure to add the side salad or a portion of broccoli and get in veg, in particular greens. They're just so abundant in nutrients to any of your restaurant meals because they're always available 99% of the time. And we're thinking about abundance. We're thinking about how to add in extra nutrients.
Yeah.
And I would totally just start there.
Okay. And like kind of maybe even fill up on that a little bit more, because sometimes I feel like the portions of, say, like the side, like say if it's some chicken or something and it comes with fries or something, there's so much fries. And like if you're having your broccoli or whatever, you're kind of like, okay, I'm full now. I don't care if I don't eat the rest of this. Like, so it's better that you're getting more of the good stuff.
Yes.
So you're kind of customizing your plate, even though they have one thing on the menu, but customize it a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good point. Sometimes people do eat their vegetables and their protein first, and then whatever you have room for, like, then eat your carbohydrate.
Okay.
And that works for a lot of people. I don't want people to just like cut out the carbs or not eat them, but that can be a nice way to making sure that you are, just getting in what you need.
Yes.
Because it's especially things like chips or crisps, they're so easy to eat larger portions of, and they're also higher in fat because the way that they're cooked. So you're just adding more calories and more energy that you don't necessarily need.
Yeah.
But if you were having something like boiled baby potatoes in a normal portion size, then you wouldn't need to kind of balance out the eating pattern there.
Yeah.
But if we're thinking about more deep fried or more processed versions of carbohydrate, then that might be a nice time to really focus on your veg and protein first to avoid overdoing it as well with those.
That is such a good strategy. It's actually giving me like flashbacks to when I was a kid. If we were like, full or whatever, like my parents would be like, okay, have you eaten all your chicken? If you've eaten all your chicken or your fish or whatever, that's fine. You're allowed to be full.
Totally.
I suppose, well, it's wasteful. The meat is
I know, that's such an Irish thing too. Well, like the kids have to wipe the plate.
Broccoli, you can leave some of your potato. If you've eaten some of your broccoli, you've eaten your chicken, you can leave the table, you're good.
Yeah, but priorities.
It does actually make a lot of sense. And like, I think that was kind of a nice, like when I think back to how I learned about food and things like that actually was kind of a good way to think about it. And I do always prioritize like my meat and my vegetables. And
brilliant.
Yeah,
me too. I add greens to, I would say, 90% of the meals that I make at home.
Yeah.
And I'll usually just eat them first because they're not that exciting.
Yeah.
But I know that I want to get in the full portion.
Yeah.
And then I can really enjoy the rest of what's on my plate. But it's just a habit that I've created for myself that it's just always there. And even now my partner does it too, because I just always make sure that we do have some sort of salad or cooked veg on the side and that we're getting that in our meals, because we have no issue with getting in enough protein and carbohydrates, but veg is just one of those really easy things to just like sack off, especially if you're someone that buys ready meals or like a lasagna that you can pop in the air fryer and you think you're good to go. Just also make sure you bring the side salad in to get those veggies in and that fiber in.
I love that because like, okay, sometimes we're eating out and we're in a restaurant, but sometimes we, convenience meal is the answer, or we're staying in an Airbnb, maybe there's only microwave or whatever. So you are having that ready meal. So we're not demonizing that. It went on occasion. Exactly. And then you're just like, okay, but add like a little bit of rocket, just buy a bag of rocket as well, like, or whatever, and just add that in as a little bit of extra greens. I love that.
Yeah. And that's how you're going to get your, 30 plants a week.
Yeah.
So if you try to keep that goal with you, if you're traveling, so easy to get it from adding a side salad. And you also mentioned this where you have little salad toppers with a combination of different seeds.
Yes.
Throw those onto extra healthy fats, extra plants, helping your gut health, keeping things strong.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And I loved it as well that you said about the potato with the skin on. Some people eat kiwis with the skin on. Golden kiwis, I can do that. Not the furry one, not so much.
The skin on our fruits and vegetables are really high in fiber, insoluble fiber, which is really rough. And it's called the sweeping brush of our intestine. So it can be so helpful if you struggle with any sort of constipation.
Okay.
But even if you don't, it's just really beneficial for increasing the diversity in your gut microbiome.
Yeah, so that 30 plants is a huge contributor then to that. We hear a lot about gut microbiome, but in a practical sense, like away from probiotics, just in day to day, like it's just kind of like thinking about the diversity that you can feed your gut bacteria with, right?
Yeah. And anyone that maybe has like IBS or thinks that they might have like a functional gut issue, they might be more sensitive to different types of fibers because they can create gas, bloating, all of those uncomfortable side effects. But that doesn't mean they're bad, but you might just have to work through foods that work for you and foods that don't. But there can also be a bit of a lead-in period where you kind of have to get used to certain fibers as well. And you might have increased bloating for a short period of time, and then it will pass. So some people have lower fiber diets because of how it makes them feel.
Sure.
But it's not a bad sign if you find the ones that work for you, and you just need to give your body a little bit of time to get used to them.
Okay. Yeah. So because you are providing, I suppose there's a bit of work in digesting but that's good.
Yes.
But it might just take a bit of an adjustment period.
Yeah.
Okay.
So don't give up.
Yeah, don't give up.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, because I think this time of year as well, people will be thinking about gut health. So good gut health, it does come from those 30 plants. And when it comes to probiotics, where would you see like a role for those? Yeah.
I would use probiotics like post antibiotics or food poisoning, where a lot of the good gut microbiome is wiped out. And the thing with probiotics is that they're very strain and dose dependent, which means that particular strains have been studied for particular issues. So there's particular strains that help with constipation. There's particular strains that help with loose stools. All these types of things. But the word, like even the names of these strains are very, very scientific and particular. They're not general knowledge. Most people don't know which one work for which. So if you were really interested and you were struggling with constipation and you wanted to try a probiotic, you could do your own research, find the name of a strain. I would just maybe Google, probiotic strain that is evidence-based for constipation, and then find a product that contains that strain at that dose. So you can see it's quite specific. It's almost like, looking for a medication for a particular condition. So that's why probiotics are quite a difficult one to really recommend, I would say, for the general population. It's very particular on what you're looking for and what's available to you. There's just so much research that's ongoing and that's going to be coming out. But right now, many things are quite general. So it's really hard to promote, one thing over the next, unless you've been on antibiotics and you really just need a full kind of reboot of your gut microbiome, adding in healthy things. But what you can do is focus on foods that help increase the bacteria in your gut, like probiotic rich foods or prebiotic foods.
Yeah. So all our fruits and vegetables are super good for feeding the gut and
exactly. But even something like a live yogurt that has, gut cultures added to the product. That's a great way to continue to bring in, small amounts of microorganisms into the gut. And prebiotics are just kind of high fibrous foods that help feed the gut microbiome as well. So they're two different things, and like good examples of prebiotics would be things like beans and lentils. So there's great ways to do it through a food first approach and not have to go down the probiotic route.
Yeah, because I feel like we even like from a budget perspective, if you feel like you're supposed to be on a probiotic all the time, and then it's not any benefit, I'm always really conscious of buying unnecessary supplements or just taking what you need when you need it. And a question I had for you, Ciara, as well is around how does somebody know that they should see a dietitian? Do they need to be referred? Let's say if it's a gut problem, or should they see their GP first, or is there ever a case where they should just approach a dietitian? Or
really good question. I would say if anything has changed in someone's body, like any changes to their digestion or their bowel habits, I would go to the doctor first. First of all, it's important to pick up on any changes and see if there's any underlying conditions.
Right.
But having a diagnosis, if there is an underlying condition, is so helpful for the dietitian, because then things can be tailored to whatever is going on.
Right.
Even something like IBS, like a functional gut disorder, if that's been diagnosed, then a dietitian can really help someone specifically through that once they know what's going on.
Okay.
And red flags, like things like any sort of new onset of bleeding, or any changes that are, lasting more than a few weeks, like those are all kind of things that should be checked by a doctor anyway.
Sure.
But I suppose if there's goals that someone has that aren't particular to a change in symptoms or, feeling unwell or feeling different,
Yes.
then they can absolutely go to a dietitian on their own.
Okay.
Access to dietitians are a little bit tricky, I would say. It really depends what you're looking for, but a private dietitian you can go to on your own accord, and then community or hospital-based dietitians are referral-based for particular conditions. So if you don't have a condition, it would probably be through a private sector.
Okay. If it's more from a health optimization perspective, or like if somebody's like you worked obviously in the Rotunda in women's health, and maybe people who are thinking about fertility and having a baby and things like that, they might potentially go to a dietitian. Or
There's a huge role for nutrition and dietetics in preconception. Access to those in the public system is quite very limited, I would say. So that's a good reason to seek support in privately. Unfortunately, I think that will change.
Yes.
But absolutely, okay. And I would always recommend for people to find dietitians that are well versed in the area that they're looking for, because kind of like a doctor, you can't, dietitians don't know everything about every condition.
Yes.
So it'd be worth, even having like a call with a dietitian before you sign up to any services to see if you're kind of within their field of expertise.
Okay, perfect. That's amazing, Ciara. I feel like we got a really good whistle stop tour of starting ourselves off for the year. But I suppose to kind of wrap things up, what's kind of one thing that people could implement this week, like into their week, that you think would benefit them from a diet lifestyle perspective, that you feel like, not enough people are paying attention to maybe?
I'm going to go back to my theme of abundance.
Yes.
I think add more color and add more diversity to your diet this week.
Okay.
Color, I mean fruits and vegetables. Yes. Maybe not Skittles or whatever else comes to mind. But take the time to reflect on the foods in your diet and try to add one new food.
Yes.
You may have had it before, it's just not part of your diet at the moment, but just add more variety and color and it will make a difference.
Amazing. So we're thinking, what's missing from my plate? What could I add to my plate? Amazing. And Ciara, where can people find you if they want to follow more of your fabulous information?
Instagram is the best. Ciara McNulty RD for registered dietitian. That is the best place to find me.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for joining us, Ciara. Thank you. That's it for today's episode of The Wellness Script. If you enjoyed it, hit subscribe. It really helps us grow and keeps these evidence-based conversations coming with top experts to help you with your health and wellness. Follow us at Wellness Script Pod on Instagram and TikTok so you don't miss an episode or a live event. And a big thank you to Sona Vitamins, Ireland's longest established nutritional supplement producer, for supporting the show. Catch you next Wednesday with a brand new episode, Your Prescription for Better Living.